Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. I recently discovered that my wife has been manipulating me throughout our 7-year marriage. At first, I convinced myself that my actions were driven by love for Claire, that I genuinely wanted to make her happy. But looking back now, I realized the truth was far simpler and far sadder. I went along with her wishes not out of affection, but out of fear. Fear of conflict, fear of her anger, fear of the cold silence that would descend over our house like a fog whenever I dared to disagree. Claire Brennan exploited me from the very beginning, though I was too blind to see it at the time. Our paths crossed during my senior year at the University of Illinois at Chicago. She was a sophomore, and God, she was beautiful. I first noticed her at one of those crowded off-campus parties where the music was too loud and the beer too cheap. After downing a few bottles for courage, I finally worked up the nerve to approach her. "Want to dance?" I asked, half expecting her to turn me down. To my surprise, she agreed. We moved to the makeshift dance floor in someone's living room, and somehow we ended up talking. I remember fumbling for something clever to say. "What brings a girl like you to a place like this?" I asked, one of those stupid pickup lines you hear in movies. She laughed. "I don't really do the whole dating scene," she said, which only made her more intriguing. As the evening wore on, we both drank too much. She told me she'd recently broken up with her boyfriend and was looking for some carefree fun. A friend had dragged her to this party, she said. One thing led to another, and we ended up back at my dorm room. I put a sock on the doorknob, the universal signal to my roommate that I needed privacy. It was the first time I'd ever used that trick. Usually it was Vinny who brought girls home, not me. The next morning, I woke to a mess of tangled sheets and a pounding headache. I cooked her breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, nothing fancy, and walked her back to her dorm building across campus. When I suggested we meet again, she politely declined. "I'm not really ready for a new relationship right now," she said, offering me a small smile. "But if we run into each other at parties or whatever, I won't avoid you." Looking back, I can see what she was really saying. You're not what I'm looking for. You don't meet my standards. Over the next few months, I'd see her occasionally at various parties. She was always surrounded by friends, always dancing with other guys. It made sense, she was stunning after all. But when I asked her to dance, she never refused. I couldn't tell if she was actually interested or just being polite. If we're being honest about my background, I should mention that I grew up in a loving family with strong values. My parents were devoted to each other, and they raised me to treat people with respect and integrity. But during college, I strayed from those values. I attended too many parties, drank too much, and had casual encounters with several women. These relationships, if you could even call them that, felt hollow. I avoided paying for anything beyond a movie ticket, maybe convincing myself that kept things from feeling transactional. But deep down, I was unhappy, empty. My roommate Vinny Moretti noticed. Vinny was a charismatic Italian guy from Chicago's Little Italy neighborhood, the kind of person who could walk into any room and instantly become the center of attention. Despite our different personalities, he was outgoing, I was reserved, we became close friends. We were both in UIC's computer science program, and we bonded over late-night coding sessions and shared frustrations with our professors. Our friendship deepened to the point where we felt like brothers. Vinny had connections everywhere, and he'd always invite me to parties where I'd meet interesting people. He genuinely cared about getting me out of my shell. But the moment that truly sealed our friendship happened one afternoon outside the computer science building. Vinny slipped on the icy steps as we were leaving class. I was right behind him and I reacted on instinct. I grabbed him and pulled his head back to prevent it from hitting the concrete. He'd bitten his tongue when he fell, and I could see it was turned awkwardly in his mouth, blocking his airway. Without thinking, I reached in and gently repositioned it. When he finally took a deep breath, color flooded back into his face. I nearly cried seeing my best friend in pain like that. His eyes flew open and met mine, and he must have seen the worry written all over my face. "What's wrong, David? What happened?" he asked weakly. "You're fine, Vinny. You're gonna be fine," I told him. "You just took a bad fall. Let me up." I'm okay, really, he insisted. Reluctantly, I helped him to his feet. The paramedics arrived and checked him over thoroughly. When they finally gave him the all-clear, we both breathed a sigh of relief and headed back to the dorms. As we approached the entrance to our building, Vinny stopped abruptly. A gleaming black limousine was parked at the curb, its driver standing at attention by the rear door. Vinny walked toward it, and the driver immediately opened the door. Out stepped Salvatore Moretti, Vinny's father, a man of impressive height and build, easily 250 pounds. He wrapped Vinny in a crushing hug, relief evident on his face. "Dad, this is David," Vinny said, gesturing to me. Salvatore's eyes shifted to me. "I know who he is," he said, his voice low and measured. His expression softened into a warm smile. "I'm forever in your debt for saving my son," he said, gripping my hand firmly. "If you ever need help, anything at all, you contact me. I mean that sincerely." He leaned in closer, lowering his voice even further. "Don't ever forget that." 5 minutes later, Vinny climbed into the limo and it pulled away, heading back to Little Italy. I stood there on the sidewalk, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. But during my senior year, everything changed when I reconnected with Claire. Although we'd only had that one night together, I continued to see her around campus, and she was always friendly. It made me wonder if maybe she had feelings for me after all. So I took a chance and asked her out again. To my surprise, she said yes. Our date consisted of dinner at a nice restaurant near campus, followed by a movie. Things progressed quickly that night. When I got back to my place, I realized I'd been careless. Looking ahead, I'll admit that I should have been more careful. The following week, I asked her out again, and she readily agreed. It seemed like we were in a real relationship now. We continued seeing each other over the next few weekends. Then one evening, she reached out with unexpected news. "David, I'm pregnant," she said quietly. She insisted I was the only man she'd been with. The news hit me like a freight train. Even though part of me suspected she might be manipulating me, I'd been raised to do the right thing. The situation was complicated by the fact that I was about to graduate. I already had a job lined up at my father's insurance agency, Castellano Associates, thanks to the business courses I'd taken to get my insurance license. Claire, on the other hand, had been raised by her grandparents after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. Despite their limited means, they'd promised to support her education. She was studying to become a paralegal. Although I firmly believed in a woman's right to choose, I personally couldn't accept the idea of ending the pregnancy. I reflected that perhaps it was easier to hold that position when it was someone else making the actual decision. "Let's get married," I suggested, thinking about the stable position I was about to start. "You can continue your studies. Maybe take a semester off when the baby comes. I'll support us. I love you, and I want to be there for our child." Even as I said it, I had doubts about my feelings for her. But I knew it was the right thing to do. I called my parents to tell them about our plans. Although they'd never met Claire, I explained the situation, the pregnancy, our commitment to each other. I told them about my father's insurance business, though I knew he was more than just an agency owner. He also dealt in real estate and ran estate auctions on the side. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. Shortly after graduation, Claire and I got married in a small ceremony. Her grandparents attended, and they were genuinely kind to me. In a private moment, they pulled me aside. "We want to thank you for taking care of Claire," her grandfather said. "She can be willful sometimes, stubborn. We've done our best to guide her, but she gets upset when things don't go her way." At the time, I didn't fully grasp what they were trying to tell me. We'd only really known each other through that one drunken night and a few dates afterward. I thought I could handle whatever challenges lay ahead. After we married, we rented a modest 3-bedroom house not far from my parents, with an option to buy within a year. I truly believed we could make it work. When our daughter Emma was born, Claire took a 10-week break from school before transferring to a community college closer to home. My mother graciously watched Emma while Claire attended classes. I found satisfaction in my work. I handled insurance policies, occasionally helped with real estate sales, and sometimes assisted at the auctions my father ran with his partner, Bob. I couldn't become an auctioneer myself. That was my father's domain, but I enjoyed being part of the business. Growing up, I hadn't thought much about what marriage was supposed to look like. I'd only known my parents' relationship, and they always seemed close. Laughing together, supporting each other. Claire and I weren't like that. For the first 2 years of our marriage, I worked while Claire finished her degree. In the evenings, we'd stay home with Emma, watching television while she played on the floor. Our intimate life occurred about twice a week, and I always prioritized Claire's needs. As far as I remember, she never complained during those early years. After Emma was born, Claire started taking birth control pills since we both agreed we weren't ready for another child yet. Everything seemed to be going well until Claire graduated. When I suggested she could work at our family agency doing billing or administrative work, she said she'd prefer to work as a paralegal at a law firm. Eventually, she landed a position at Brennan Walsh Associates, a large firm downtown. I thought the extra income would help us, but Claire spent her entire salary on herself. Not that we needed it. My income was stable enough to cover all our necessities. But once Claire started earning her own money, nothing we had seemed good enough anymore. She insisted on buying a new car, a sporty one. Then she wanted new furniture, new appliances, new everything. I firmly refused to replace perfectly good furniture and appliances just because they weren't brand new. If she wanted everything new, she could pay for it herself. Being stubborn, a trait her grandparents had warned me about, she pursued her desires relentlessly. Eventually, I compromised and agreed to split the cost of new furniture and appliances with her. But here's the thing. I never saw a penny of the rest of her earnings. I didn't even know her exact salary. When tax season came around, Claire insisted her bosses advised us to file separately. Trusting her, I agreed. I didn't know until much later that her bosses had never given her such advice. She simply didn't want me knowing about her income. She also bought clothes constantly. Her closet overflowed with outfits, many of which seemed far too revealing and provocative for a professional office environment. Whenever I tried to mention this, an argument would inevitably erupt. After just 6 months at the firm, Claire announced she needed girls' nights out with her friends, time that was her own. Every Friday night, she'd go out and typically return around midnight. I didn't complain because I played golf twice a week myself and felt I had no grounds for objection. When golf season ended, I joined a bowling league with colleagues from the office. That's how we lived. When Emma started school, we fell into a routine. Claire would lay out Emma's clothes the night before, and I'd wake up with Emma each morning. We'd have breakfast together, and I'd drive her to school. I usually picked her up too, unless something came up at work. In those cases, my mother would take her until either Claire or I could get her. Over time, I noticed Claire and I were drifting apart. It was gradual but unmistakable. She'd never really liked my friends. She was polite to their faces but called them cranks and nerds behind their backs. She had her own group of friends whom she'd invite over for cards and drinks. Despite these differences, I tried to be a supportive husband. I constantly tried to avoid conflicts. I didn't particularly like her friends either. They reminded me of my college days. Their conversations always revolved around gossip and intimate details of their personal lives, and their gatherings always involved excessive drinking. If I chose not to participate in these events, it almost always led to a fight. I also couldn't help noticing that the men at these gatherings seemed to flirt with Claire. When I expressed my concerns, she'd brush them off with a laugh. In fact, I was often the subject of their jokes, though Claire never defended me. During this period, Claire started working later and later. Emma and I developed an unbreakable bond. We became best friends. She trusted me completely and shared everything about her school day. I was there for her every evening, helping with homework. Emma was genuinely passionate about learning, and I admired her dedication. Attending parent-teacher conferences was non-negotiable for me because I wanted to be involved in every aspect of her life. At home, Claire was kind to Emma, but it wasn't the same as being present. Despite Claire's efforts, Emma longed for her mother to be around more, to spend real quality time together. When Emma would ask if her mother could attend school events, Claire would inevitably reply that she had work responsibilities and needed to contribute to the family's financial stability. After being married for about 7 years, I started going online late at night after putting Emma to bed. That's when I stumbled across stories about unfaithful spouses. The more I read, the more I found disturbing similarities between the behaviors described and Claire's actions. I was torn between doubting my own sanity and suspecting Claire's infidelity. Despite her excellent acting skills, I couldn't shake the conviction that I was living with an unfaithful wife. I became vigilant, closely monitoring her phone conversations. I noticed she'd either abruptly end calls or change the subject when I entered the room. She constantly deleted all her messages and frequently cleared her call history. I observed that after nights out with friends, she'd carefully wash her clothes the next day, especially her undergarments. There were other signs throughout our relationship. After returning from parties, she'd show no interest in intimacy. When I had to attend work conferences and Emma stayed overnight with my parents, I briefly considered hiring a private investigator. But I doubted it was worth the expense in Illinois, where everything, including divorce assets, was typically divided equally anyway. I also thought about buying surveillance equipment after reading those online stories, but deep down I already knew Claire was cheating. Besides, I couldn't afford such equipment. I was most worried about Emma. She was the reason I stayed in the relationship with Claire. If we hadn't had a daughter together, I would have left long ago. Claire began going out with friends even more frequently, using any excuse to escape. Sometimes I'd accompany her, but I found no pleasure in these outings. She'd behave provocatively with other men, seemingly daring me to react. At some point, I realized I was constantly falling short of expectations. Our possessions paled in comparison to what her friends had. Although we still maintained an intimate relationship, it became rare, once a month if I was lucky. She seemed to derive no pleasure from it anymore, as if she was simply fulfilling a duty. I continued the relationship only for Emma's sake, though now even that seemed wrong. Then one day everything collapsed. I returned home unexpectedly from a business trip a day ahead of schedule without warning anyone. As I approached the front door, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway. I quietly opened the door and stepped inside. The living room light was on, but no one was there. I could distinctly hear sounds coming from our bedroom. What I found devastated me. Claire was in our bed with someone. Not just anyone, but Brad, the manager of the fitness center she'd been attending. Brad had always flirted with her, but now he'd been caught in the act. The thing that baffled me was that Brad's wife, Jill, was genuinely lovely. Refined features, warm personality, attractive by anyone's standards. Why would a man betray such an amazing spouse? I'd met Jill several times at social gatherings, and she was one of the few people in Claire's circle that I actually liked. I walked in on them. Claire, surprised by my arrival, had the audacity to ask why I hadn't called ahead. Annoyed, she demanded that I leave the room so they could get dressed. In response, I casually mentioned that perhaps I should call Jill and invite her over. Brad, having heard this, threatened me with physical violence if I told Jill what had happened. Standing there, I realized Brad was probably capable of carrying out his threat. I doubted my ability to defend myself. It was pointless to resist. I'd only get hurt, and Claire would probably get satisfaction from witnessing it. I left the room and heard muffled murmuring before the door closed completely. Brad came out first, his tone full of anger. "Look, I was serious about Jill," he said. "If she finds out the truth, you'll end up in the hospital. You understand?" All I could manage was, "Get out of my house." He turned and left without another word. Then Claire appeared, her gaze fixed on me. "Okay, now you know," she said. "I tried to hide it from you, but I knew sooner or later you'd find out." "I want a divorce," I said. "I'll start the paperwork tomorrow. I think it would be best if you just left." She looked at me and laughed. That same cold laugh that still haunts me. "You can't leave me. A divorce means I get half of everything you own. From a financial standpoint, you simply can't afford it. Besides, think about how this will affect our beloved daughter. How will you explain the situation to her?" "I'm going to be honest with her," I replied. "She's a smart girl. She can handle the truth. Besides, you're rarely around anyway. I'm not leaving, and you don't have the strength to make me, Claire answered. If you want to avoid me, I suggest you move into the guest room. I decided to leave the house and pick up Emma. It was extremely important for me to talk to her and tell her the real state of affairs. I desperately wanted to shield her from the truth, but there was no escaping the fact that I couldn't stay with her mother. After picking her up from school, I decided to take her out for pizza before breaking the news. Emma, I need to discuss something important with you, I began, searching for the right words. It's about your mom and me. Her answer took me by surprise. You're getting a divorce, aren't you, Daddy? I nodded, wanting to dispel her anxiety. Yes, but I wanted to tell you myself so you don't get too upset. I'm sorry, sweetheart, but your mom and I can't be together anymore. Her next words pierced my heart. You found out she cheated on you, didn't you, Dad? I took a deep breath, realizing the truth had finally come out. I knew about it for a while, and I tried my best to protect you from it. But I knew that one day you'd find out. Then came her innocent request. Can I live with you, Daddy? I felt my world shift. Are you saying you knew about Mom's affairs and deliberately hid it from me? I asked, my voice full of confusion. Emma, my 7-year-old daughter, looked at me with a mixture of love and concern. Dad, I love you very much, and I didn't want you to suffer, she confessed. I thought if you didn't find out, it wouldn't hurt you. Her words startled me. How could my young daughter be burdened with such knowledge? So you're saying you kept this secret to protect me from pain? I asked, still trying to make sense of everything. And how long have you known about this? Emma's eyes met mine, filled with wisdom that didn't match her years. I've known since I saw Mom with Uncle Joe a few months ago, she said, sadness in her voice. I was hoping it was just a one-time thing, but eventually I saw her with Warren, that guy from the grocery store, and I noticed she talks to her friends too often and goes to parties. Dad, I'm sorry for hiding this from you, but deep down I knew you'd find out the truth sooner or later. I just wish it hadn't been this way. Dear God, my precious daughter had known about her mother's infidelity but decided not to talk about it to spare my feelings. I felt compelled to ask how she'd found out. It turned out that Uncle Joe wasn't really her uncle. Emma just called him that at her mother's direction out of respect. Did Mom do anything with this man in your presence? I asked carefully. No, Daddy, she replied. You were on a business trip, and I was staying with my friend Stacy nearby. I came back home to pick up my bike, and when I went into the garage, I heard strange noises coming from the house. Looking inside, I saw Uncle Joe with Mom. Realizing what they were doing, I quietly left. Are you sure, Emma? Yes, Daddy, she confirmed. I've heard similar sounds between you and Mom, only you always closed the door. Mom didn't know I was there, and I was afraid to tell you. I knew it would hurt you. What about Warren? I asked gently. I didn't see anything directly, she explained, but I heard Mom talking to someone on the phone, and she called his name. She told him I'd be going to Grandma's later. Just before I left, I was packing my overnight bag when he suddenly came to the door. He quickly hugged Mom and kissed her, not knowing I could see them. Mom quickly told him he should wait until I left. When I walked past the bedroom, he just smiled at me. The next morning when Grandma dropped me off, he was still there, pretending he'd forgotten something. Maybe even milk. Dad, I may be small, but I'm not naive. Hearing her words, I was torn between anger and wanting to smile, realizing that everything was truly over between Claire and me. Regardless of the consequences, I felt strangely indifferent. After we returned home, Emma hardly spoke to her mother. If Claire asked direct questions, Emma would answer, but otherwise she remained silent. The next morning I called a lawyer. John Mitchell was a respected family attorney my father had worked with on some estate matters. I explained the situation to him, Claire's infidelity, my concerns about Emma, my desire for divorce. Getting custody as the father won't be easy, John warned me. But if you have concrete evidence of infidelity and can demonstrate it's affecting Emma's well-being, we have a chance. Over the next month, I quietly gathered evidence. I documented every late night, every suspicious charge, every inconsistency in Claire's stories. I kept a journal of Emma's comments, nothing directly incriminating, but enough to establish a pattern. I also confirmed the details Emma had shared with me. The bicycle incident she'd mentioned, where she'd seen Joe with her mother. I verified the timeline matched one of my business trips. The Warren encounter. I checked our home security system records and saw his car had been parked outside our house multiple times on days when I was at work. That night, I called John and told him everything, including Emma's testimony about what she'd witnessed. "This changes things," he said. "Emma witnessing inappropriate behavior. That's grounds for serious concern about her living situation. We need to act quickly before Claire has a chance to coach Emma or change her story." We filed for divorce the next week. The papers cited irreconcilable differences, but more importantly, they requested primary custody of Emma based on concerns about her mother's behavior and judgment. When Claire was served at her office, she exploded. She came home that evening, fury written across her face. "How dare you?" she screamed. "You think you can take Emma from me? I'm her mother. You're also someone who brings men into our home while our daughter is here," I said calmly. "Someone who's teaching our 7-year-old to keep secrets." "You can't prove anything," she hissed. "Actually, I can," I replied. "Emma's already given a statement to my lawyer. I have financial records. I have testimony from neighbors who've seen these men coming and going." Her face went pale. For a moment, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Then the mask of anger returned. "Fine," she spat, "but I'm taking you for everything you're worth. The house, alimony, child support, all of it." She stormed out, and I heard her car peel out of the driveway. The next few weeks were tense. Claire and I barely spoke. She'd come home late, sleep in the guest room, and leave early in the morning. When Emma asked why Mommy and Daddy weren't talking, I explained as gently as I could that sometimes grown-ups have disagreements, but we both loved her very much. My lawyer worked efficiently to expedite the case. In the meantime, I asked my mother to take Emma for a few days. I couldn't bear the thought of her being in the house with the toxic atmosphere between Claire and me. "Take all the time you need," Mom said when I dropped Emma off. "We love having her here." I promised I'd visit every evening, which I did. Those visits with Emma, playing board games, reading stories, tucking her into bed, were the only peace I found during those dark days. Back at home, Claire presented her demands. She wanted the house, half my business assets, substantial child support, and alimony. "You think you can just walk away from this marriage without consequences?" she said coldly. "I gave you 7 years of my life." I didn't bother responding. I simply went to bed. The next day, John called with good news. He'd managed to schedule an expedited hearing on custody and temporary living arrangements for the following Monday. That evening, when I came home, Claire was waiting for me, practically vibrating with rage. "How can you be so stupid?" she screamed. "You're accusing me of being unfaithful? Where's your proof? Show me these so-called photos or phone records." "You have nothing." I refused to engage. My goal was simple: get custody of Emma. Everything else was secondary. If I antagonized Claire too much, she might become even more vindictive, and that wouldn't help my case. Monday morning arrived. I picked Emma up from my parents' house and brought her with me to the courthouse. Claire was already there with her lawyer. John met us in the hallway. "Why is Emma here?" Claire demanded when she saw us. "She's part of this divorce," I replied calmly. "She should have a say in where she wants to live." "Children belong with their mothers," Claire snapped. "I suppose we'll let the judge decide that," I said. We filed into the judge's chambers, all of us except Emma, whom the bailiff asked to wait in the lobby. Judge Patricia Hernandez was a stern-looking woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She reviewed the paperwork in front of her before speaking. "This is a preliminary hearing, not the final divorce proceeding," she said. "We're here to establish temporary custody and property arrangements. If you can reach an agreement, it will be documented and submitted to the court. If not, I'll make an interim ruling until the trial, at which point all evidence will be formally presented. She pressed a button on her desk. Please bring Emma in. Emma entered quietly, looking small and nervous in the formal setting. Hello, Emma, Judge Hernandez said kindly. I just need to ask you a few questions. Okay? Emma nodded. Do you know why your parents are here today? They're getting divorced, Emma said softly. Do you understand what that means? They won't be married anymore, and I have to choose where to live. The judge's expression softened. You're a very perceptive young lady. Can you wait outside for just a few more minutes while I talk to your parents? Emma left, and the judge's demeanor shifted back to business. She seems like a well-adjusted, intelligent child, the judge observed. It's unfortunate that both of you couldn't resolve this privately. Claire spoke up quickly. Thank you, Your Honor. I've tried very hard to maintain stability for her. I remained silent as Claire's lawyer outlined her requests. Primary custody of Emma, child support of $150 per week, spousal support of another $100 weekly, the house and its contents, half of my business assets. Judge Hernandez reviewed the documents carefully. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, she noted. Assets will be divided equitably, which typically means equally. Claire's smug expression returned. She clearly thought she'd get everything she wanted. The judge turned to me. Mr. Castellano, your petition requests an expedited hearing. What are your grounds for divorce? Adultery, Your Honor, I said, keeping my voice steady. My wife has been having multiple extramarital affairs. I cannot accept that my daughter will be exposed to this behavior. Claire interrupted furiously. You can't prove any of this. You're pathetic, David. Show these alleged photos, these phone records, these video recordings. There's nothing because I haven't done anything wrong. Mrs. Brennan, please control yourself, Judge Hernandez said firmly. Then she turned back to me. Do you have concrete evidence to support these claims? Your Honor, I have a witness who observed 2 separate incidents firsthand, I said. My daughter Emma personally witnessed her mother's infidelity. He's lying, Claire shouted. Emma was never there. How dare you use our daughter like this? He's making everything up. The judge held up her hand for silence. Mrs. Brennan, do you know a man named Joe? Claire hesitated. Yes, he's a family friend, purely platonic. I've never had any inappropriate relationship with him. Then perhaps you can explain how your daughter would know that this man has a tattoo of a skull and crossbones on his buttocks, the judge said. If necessary, we can subpoena him to verify this information. Claire's face went white. That's impossible. She never saw. She couldn't have. Emma told me she saw you with Joe when she came back to get her bicycle, I said. She also mentioned seeing you with Warren. The reason she didn't tell you is because you're never around. And what did you expect her to do? You told her to keep secrets from me. Judge Hernandez's expression hardened. Based on what I'm hearing, I'm making the following interim ruling. Mr. Castellano will have primary custody of Emma. Mrs. Brennan will have extensive visitation rights to be determined in the final proceedings. Claire looked stunned. As for property division, the judge continued, the house and its contents will be assessed and divided equitably. John quickly interjected. Your Honor, we've already had the property appraised. The house is valued at $120,000 with $70,000 remaining on the mortgage, giving it a net value of $50,000. The contents are valued at $30,000. Including 2 vehicles, the total marital assets are approximately $80,000. Is that all? Claire exclaimed. I bought most of that furniture myself. It's worth much more. Mrs. Brennan, the judge said patiently. In divorce proceedings, property is divided based on marital assets, not who made the purchase. Since there's no prenuptial agreement, the division will be equal. The reason Mr. Castellano is being awarded the house is because your daughter's well-being is paramount. She needs stability, her school, her friends, her familiar environment. The judge looked at me. Mr. Castellano, can you pay Mrs. Brennan's share of the assets? $30,000? Yes, Your Honor. I can borrow from my parents and repay them over time. Neither of us could get a bank loan while the divorce is pending. Judge Hernandez nodded. Mrs. Brennan, there's one more issue to address. I notice you and Mr. Castellano have similar incomes. You've requested weekly child support of $150, but given the custody arrangement, you will be paying that amount to Mr. Castellano for Emma's care. That's not fair, Claire protested. Why should I pay him? You have 3 days to vacate the premises, the judge stated, ignoring her outburst. You may take only your personal belongings. This is an interim order. You have the right to challenge it in the final divorce proceedings, but I should warn you, Mr. Castellano appears to have substantial evidence supporting his custody claim. The court tends to rule in favor of the child's best interests. I stepped out into the hallway feeling overwhelmed. Emma ran to me, and I wrapped her in a tight hug, my eyes stinging with tears. I knew losing daily contact with her mother would be hard on her, but we'd get through it together. But the ordeal wasn't over yet. Claire's reaction to the court's decision was predictably ugly. Her lawyer informed her that appealing would be expensive and unlikely to succeed. To settle everything, my father generously lent me the money to pay Claire her share. Every week when Claire's court-ordered child support payment arrived, I would give it to my father to pay down what I owed him. Fortunately, my income was more than sufficient, especially now that Claire was no longer draining our finances. I even managed to save a little. Life settled into a new routine. Emma and I were building our own little world, one without the constant tension and criticism that had defined my marriage. I worked hard, spent my evenings with my daughter, and slowly began to feel like myself again. The house felt lighter somehow, as if a dark cloud had lifted. Emma laughed more. I smiled more. We were healing. But one irritation persisted. Claire herself. Emma told me that every weekend she spent with her mother, Claire would constantly ask questions about me. What I was doing, who I was seeing, where I was going. But Mommy apologized for being mean before, Emma mentioned one day. She said she wants to be a better mom. I was glad to hear Claire was at least trying to maintain a positive relationship with Emma, or at least presenting that image. Over time, however, Claire began making excuses to skip her scheduled visitation weekends. She had to work late, or she had a business trip, or she wasn't feeling well. Each time, Emma would be disappointed, though she tried to hide it. I'd take her out for ice cream or to a movie to lift her spirits. Claire had apparently gotten a job as a paralegal at one of the larger law firms downtown. She wouldn't tell me which one, or give me any details about her work. She refused to share information about her colleagues or her responsibilities. I suspected she was continuing her pattern of behavior with men, but as long as she kept that away from Emma, it was no longer my concern. Her personal life had ceased to be my problem. And though I didn't know it yet, life was about to take another unexpected turn. One day my father called me into his office, promising a surprise. When I entered, I was greeted by an old, familiar face. Rachel, I said, hardly believing my eyes. Hi, David, she replied with a warm smile. Or do you still prefer calling me Sam? It was Rachel Hayes, though everyone had always called her Sam. The nickname came from her middle name, Samantha. When I was about 12 years old, Sam became part of our family as a foster child. She was 14 at the time. Her parents had been arrested for drug trafficking and sent to prison. During the legal proceedings, the state was preparing to sell their house and property. That's when my parents met Sam. When my mother offered to become her foster parent, Sam was saved from going into the children's institution system. Although people usually fostered younger children, my parents recognized something special in Sam. She became part of our family. I remember the day she enlisted in the Army after graduating high school. I'd fallen in love with her, though I'd never told her, and I felt her absence keenly when she left. It was obvious from her actions that she cared deeply about my parents. She never hesitated to fulfill their requests and always showed them respect. Being smart and 2 years older than me, she often helped me with my homework, and she became like an older sister to me. I must have loved her in some way, though I never admitted it. When she left for basic training, I hugged her tightly. There were tears in her eyes. Unfortunately, I was still in high school when she came home on leave the first few times. 10 years had passed since we'd last seen each other, and it was wonderful to see her again. Her appearance was striking. She'd grown into a beautiful, confident woman, and she greeted me warmly with a hug. To my surprise, my father informed me that he'd hired her as the new office secretary. She explained that she'd spent her first few years in the service in combat roles, but had recently transitioned to working with computers and electronics overseas. Throughout the difficult period of my divorce, Sam's radiant smile every morning was a much-needed source of comfort. It's worth mentioning that Claire and Sam didn't get along from the very beginning. Sam confessed to me one day that she liked to observe people, and she didn't think Claire was reliable. "David, I genuinely care about you, and I don't want to tell you how to live your life," she said. "But I don't advise you to trust her completely. I've heard rumors that even while you two were together, she was involved with someone else." Her words stung, but I had my own doubts about Claire by then. "That reflects badly on me," I admitted. "But I had to present myself in the best light possible during the divorce so I wouldn't risk losing Emma." "I understand," Sam said gently. My father invited Emma and me to a party at the office, a homecoming celebration for Sam. When we arrived, I was happy to introduce Emma to Sam properly, and they immediately became friends. It was obvious that a real connection had been established between them, and I was glad they'd both found a new friend. Meanwhile, Claire, my soon-to-be ex-wife, kept coming to the house under various pretexts, claiming she'd forgotten something. Deep down, I knew she was just testing me. The anticipation of our divorce being finalized overwhelmed me because it meant I would no longer have any reason to tolerate Claire's presence in the house. I waited patiently, taking my time. When Emma wasn't around, Claire wouldn't stop throwing her affairs in my face, as if she couldn't let go of the past. I knew I shouldn't let it bother me, but it did. Finally, the long-awaited day came, the final registration of our divorce. Life went on as usual, though in a different way. I sincerely treasured every moment spent with Emma. At that point, she was my whole world. It's important to note that immediately after Emma was born, I discreetly conducted a DNA test that confirmed she was indeed my biological daughter. I decided not to tell Claire about it. But among the joyful moments in my life, there was also a dark side. I knew about Joe, Warren, and Brad, but I suspected there were countless other men whose names remained unknown to me. In a sense, this ignorance was a blessing. Deep down, I wanted revenge, but I didn't know what to do. Every time I caught a glimpse of these men around town, they'd mock me. I suspected this was causing Emma discomfort, but she stayed silent about it. It became clear to me that I needed to find some way to respond. But how? While working, I encountered Sam on a daily basis. She became a ray of sunshine in my otherwise dull routine. Our bond at work grew even stronger after I finalized the divorce. One fateful day, I invited Emma to come with me to the office. To my surprise, she struck up an animated conversation with Sam. After leaving the office, Emma asked if Sam could join us for lunch and a movie. "I'm sure Sam probably has other plans, Princess," I said with a smile. "Maybe she doesn't like pizza or watching kids' movies. Personally, I love pizza and cartoons," Sam said, smiling back at me. I didn't know what to say. It seemed the two of them had already agreed on everything. I made the arrangements and informed Sam that we'd be coming to pick her up. We had a wonderful time. On the way home, I suggested we should do it again sometime. Emma looked at Sam eagerly. "How about tomorrow night, Dad? We can make popcorn and watch superhero movies together. Would you like to join us, Sam?" I was about to come up with an excuse, but Sam beat me to it. "I'd love to come watch movies with you and your dad," she replied happily. Despite the fact that I was thrilled by her answer, I understood that I needed to restrain my emotions regarding Sam. We were just friends, and I treasured the trust we shared. I wasn't going to jeopardize our relationship by pushing for something more. When we got to the middle of the movie that next evening, Emma dozed off peacefully, snoring softly on the couch between us. Sam turned to me, curious about my thoughts. At that moment, I was thinking about how I wished I had some superpower that could rid me of the painful memories that had destroyed my marriage. "David, you've won," I quietly reminded myself, recognizing the need to move forward. "It's time to let go." Sam studied me. You have an amazing daughter, a solid career, and a comfortable home, she said. That's a lot to be grateful for. Acknowledging her kind words, I confessed, it's hard for me to get rid of the constant humiliation I face when I run into those people around town. If I had superpowers, I could demand justice. Sam asked curiously, if you could have any power, what would it be? Not knowing what to say, I thought for a moment. Maybe the ability to influence circumstances? Instead of worrying about negative thoughts, I should focus on the positive ones. Despite my pure intentions, I found myself longing for an impossible connection with Sam, yearning for moments of affection and intimacy. But I kept those thoughts to myself. Sam got up to leave and expressed her gratitude for the invitation. She said she'd had a great time and asked me to give Emma a kiss for her. I hugged Sam goodbye and walked her to the door. The next morning, after preparing Emma for school, I dropped her off and headed to the office. As I was getting out of my car in the parking lot, lightning struck dangerously close to me. I don't believe it hit me directly, but the shock knocked me off my feet, causing me to hit my head on the car door. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed. Sam was standing next to me. Confused, I asked her what had happened. You vaguely recall seeing lightning and then falling? She asked gently. The doctors confirmed you suffered a concussion after hitting your head on the car. They did an MRI and assured me you'll be fine, though you'll need to spend the night here for observation. Worried about Emma, I asked about her well-being. I'll pick her up from school and bring her to visit, Sam reassured me. I can also stay with her overnight if you'd like. Without hesitation, I expressed my trust. Thank you, Sam. That would be wonderful. Feeling unusual sensations in my head, I expressed my concern. Such feelings are natural after a head injury, Sam reminded me. But the doctors assured us you'll fully recover in a few days. She glanced at her watch. It's probably time for me to get back to the office. Take care of yourself and be sure to listen to the doctors. She bent down and kissed me on the lips. The kiss wasn't just friendly. It was tender and lingering, absolutely amazing. By the way, I forgot to mention that one of your old college friends came into the office this morning, she said, her cheeks slightly flushed. He said he'd stop by here to see you. She gave me another quick kiss and left. I lay there wondering if I had some kind of power after all, because she'd kissed me right after I'd been wishing for it. I also couldn't help but wonder who might be coming to visit. After dozing off, I suddenly woke to find my college buddy, Vinny Moretti, standing right in front of me. Vinny, I said, surprised. What are you doing here? He grinned. I had some business here in Chicago and thought I'd stop by to see how you're doing. Heard you took a little tumble. During our conversation, we reminisced about the past, and I thanked him for his help over the years. We laughed about old times. Eventually, he asked about Claire. I revealed the sad truth about her infidelity and our subsequent divorce. However, I added, there was one positive result from that marriage. I have a beautiful daughter. That's great, man, Vinny said. I'm happily married myself now. Got 3 kids. They're a handful, but I wouldn't trade them for anything. Before leaving, he gripped my shoulder firmly. Remember, if you ever need anything, you can always contact me. I mean that. His words reminded me of his father's promise all those years ago. After he left, thoughts of Warren and his smug laughter popped into my head. Just 2 days ago, I'd seen him at the grocery store, bragging to his friends about how he'd taught someone's wife a few things. The desire for revenge seized me, but I pushed it away. My gaze moved to the doorway, and I saw Emma standing there with Sam. Hello, Princess. How are things at school? I asked. Great, Daddy, Emma replied. She looked at Sam. Sam told me you were struck by lightning and hit your head. I'm fine, sweetheart. I hope I can leave here tomorrow. Sam's taking me to Grandma's house, Emma said. But she promised to come back later and bring me here again. Happiness flashed across my face. I wish I could go with you now. The doctor insisted on keeping you overnight, Sam said, agreeing with the medical staff. There's no point in arguing with them. When Sam came closer, her gaze met mine. An irresistible desire made me reach up for another kiss, which she willingly reciprocated. But Sam had something important to tell me. She seemed nervous, as if what she was about to say was personal. "Emma, sweetie, can you wait in the hallway for just a moment?" Sam asked gently. Once Emma had left, Sam turned to me. "I haven't been completely honest with you," she said quietly. "Before I left the service, I spent 2 months in a psychiatric ward." I started to speak, but she held up her hand. "Please let me explain. I'm not crazy, or at least I don't think I am. But something happened that I think you deserve to know about." She took a deep breath. "A group of us went out to a bar one night. As the evening went on, some of the guys started getting excessively drunk. Their behavior toward me became inappropriate. They began harassing me despite my repeated requests to stop. Feeling cornered, I grabbed a beer bottle to defend myself. Before I knew it, the military police arrived, arrested me, and took me to a psychiatric ward where I stayed for 2 months." Her voice wavered slightly. Surprisingly, all those servicemen justified their actions by saying it was just playful behavior, claiming it was some kind of syndrome. The system believed them over me. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," I said, my heart aching for her. "You deserved so much better. I just wanted to share the truth about my past," she said. "I sincerely appreciate your trust in me." I couldn't help but wonder if my growing feelings for her had somehow pushed her to be frank with me. I knew I had to be careful with this new knowledge. As I was falling asleep that night, thoughts of Sam, Vinny, and Warren swirled through my mind. The next morning, Emma and Sam woke me up, happily informing me that I could finally go home. They'd planned to take me to breakfast at McDonald's. Not my favorite place, but the pleasant company more than made up for it. When I got home, I immediately settled into my favorite chair and opened the newspaper. To my surprise, I came across an article about an unfortunate incident involving Warren, the man I often encountered at the grocery store. By a tragic coincidence, he died in the cold confines of his workplace freezer. According to the article, the mechanism for opening the freezer door from the inside had malfunctioned, and he'd frozen to death. The article reported there were no suspicions of foul play. It appeared to be an accident. Just as I was processing this news, my father called, concerned about my well-being. He'd been away while I was in the hospital and wanted to check on me. After I assured him I was fine, he asked me to help arrange an insurance claim at the grocery store where Warren had worked. Turned out Warren had been insured by our company. While processing the documents at the store, I noticed some people casting curious glances at me. They knew about Warren's boasting about his relationship with my ex-wife, and they naturally wondered if I'd played a role in his death. Over the next week, I successfully completed all the appointments Sam had scheduled for me. Before entering each home, I'd concentrate my energy on convincing clients to purchase insurance. I also managed to sell 2 houses that week. The results were satisfying. My father, Sam, and I were all pleased. But then the situation changed when I unexpectedly encountered Brad. I'd made an appointment with a homeowner to discuss listing her property for sale. When I arrived at the address, I rang the doorbell, but no one answered. After ringing again, a pleasant-looking woman finally came to the door. Introducing myself, I reminded her about our meeting to discuss the real estate paperwork. I mentioned that I'd brought a for sale sign for the yard. Apologizing for the delay, I asked if we could start signing the documents. "Of course," she said. "I'm Mrs. Diaz. I'm sorry. The house is a bit of a mess right now." I suggested taking exterior photos first and returning another day for interior shots after she'd had time to tidy up. She agreed, saying it wouldn't be a problem. "I'll arrange for someone to come tomorrow for the remaining pictures," I said, heading outside. As I focused on photographing the front of the house, a car parked across the street caught my attention. It was definitely Brad's car. I recognized it from seeing it in my driveway that awful day. It occurred to me that Brad might be avoiding Mrs. Diaz. Sam had mentioned she was going through a divorce and planning to sell her house. Maybe Brad was the reason for her failed marriage. It seemed Brad had been cheating not only on his wife Jill but also on Claire. Unable to resist, I called Claire's number to ask if she'd be looking after Emma over the weekend. But truthfully, I also wanted to mention my encounter with Brad's car. 2 days later, it became known that Brad had tragically died while working out at his gym. According to reports, he'd been bench pressing weights that were too heavy for him without a spotter. The barbell had slipped, crushing his chest. It was a devastating accident. Not surprisingly, the police launched an investigation. They even paid me a visit, but I had a reliable alibi. At the time of Brad's death, I'd been at Emma's school attending her class performance. Unfortunately, Emma's mother hadn't been able to attend. I couldn't help but wonder if my earlier angry thoughts about Brad had somehow influenced this outcome. I hoped that Jill, whom I genuinely liked and who I suspected wasn't to blame for Brad's infidelity, would find peace. She deserved so much more than what she'd gotten from that marriage. Although the police didn't close the investigation immediately, they didn't rule it as murder. Could have been an accident. My sales continued to improve significantly, and my relationship with Emma couldn't have been better. Sam was becoming an increasingly prominent figure in our lives. Whenever I planned to take Emma somewhere, she'd always ask if Sam could come too. I was conflicted by my thoughts and emotions. Did I somehow make Emma want Sam's company? Or did Sam genuinely want to join us? Surprisingly, I hated this uncertainty. I wanted our little trio to unite simply because we all sincerely wanted it, not because of any unspoken pressure. My responsibilities at work expanded. I was now handling liability insurance for a new residential development where several construction companies were actively working. I had to contact every company and ensure the necessary insurance forms were properly filled out. Surprisingly, fate brought me face to face with the very company where Joe Akers worked. He was the man Emma had seen with Claire, the one she'd called Uncle Joe. When I passed by him at the construction site, he was grinning smugly, seemingly unaware of or uncaring about the effect his presence had on me. If only people understood the emotional impact such encounters have on someone who's been betrayed. When he was standing alone, I approached him, curious about his reaction. His expression reflected complete bewilderment as I simply stared at him for a moment before walking away. It was obvious he'd read about Warren's and Brad's deaths in the newspaper, and I was certain he'd also heard about the dissolution of my marriage. Soon after, my friend Vinny called to say he'd be passing through Chicago again and suggested we meet for lunch. We indulged in nostalgic conversations, remembering the good old days. During our meeting, Vinny made me a generous invitation to join him on a vacation in New York. Interested in my romantic life, he asked if I had someone special. In response, I confessed that I cared deeply for one woman, but our relationship wasn't officially serious yet. I gave him details about Sam. Vinny perceived the situation as quite profound. "Sounds to me like you're already in pretty deep, buddy," he said with a knowing smile. That evening, I called Sam and invited her to join me on a trip to New York. "My friend Vinny has kindly offered to show us the city," I explained. Sam quickly accepted the offer, leaving me to wonder if it was her sincere desire or something influenced by my suggestion. Having planned the trip, I left Emma in the care of my parents. I was driving back from completing some paperwork in a neighboring suburb when another car suddenly collided with mine. When I came to, I found myself back in the hospital. Sam was sitting next to my bed, and my father was standing nearby. I couldn't remember what had happened, but I had the unsettling feeling that I'd been in a serious accident. My father broke the silence. "You've been in a coma for 3 days, David. Sam and your mother have been taking turns staying with you." Worried, I asked about Emma's well-being. "She's fine," Sam reassured me. "But of course, she's been worried about her father. We all have. She's been staying with your mom because we didn't want to risk her seeing you unconscious. We'll bring her to visit later today," my father promised. Something in their expressions troubled me. "Do you guys have something to share with me?" I asked. "It seems like you're hiding something, waiting for the right moment to tell me." My father sighed. "At first, I thought it could wait, but since you've brought it up, Joe Akers passed away the same night you were in the accident." "How? Where?" I asked, shocked. "A few days ago, you mentioned seeing him at a construction site," my father replied. "That's why the police have been looking to speak with you." Sam took over, her voice gentle. "Apparently, His truck burst into flames right in front of Claire's house. According to the report, he'd been spending time with Claire and got into his truck to leave. Unfortunately, he'd been drinking and was in a high-risk state. The fire started in the engine and spread quickly. I glanced at Sam, who seemed to understand my thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that a car had deliberately crashed into me, perhaps to ensure I had an alibi for Joe's death. Sam and my father left, promising to return later with Emma. When my mother brought Emma to visit, their reunion filled me with joy. I asked about Sam. "She's been busy handling your appointments," Mom informed me. Then she gave me a knowing look. "David, it's obvious you genuinely care about Sam, don't you? Every time she's around, I can't help but notice how you look at her." "I'm sorry, Mom," I said. "She's a wonderful woman, and we all adore her. Remember, she was our foster child, not your biological sister." Mom reassured me with a warm smile. "It's perfectly normal to have feelings for her." "But Mom, I don't know how she feels. We've never discussed it. She's so caring toward Emma, and I don't want to jeopardize that relationship." "I love Sam," Emma added suddenly. "She's beautiful and treats me so well. Sometimes I think she treats me even better than Mom does." "I believe she loves you, Daddy." Sam entered the room at that moment, catching the end of Emma's comment. She smiled softly. After my mother and Emma left, Sam approached my bedside. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "That night of the accident, I think someone deliberately hit your car. I can't prove it, but the police report mentioned that the other driver fled the scene. They found the abandoned vehicle later, but it had been stolen." "Why would someone do that?" I asked, though deep down I suspected I knew the answer. "To give you an alibi," Sam said simply. "You were unconscious in the hospital when Joe died. There's no way you could have been involved." I stared at her. "Sam, I didn't." "I know you didn't," she interrupted gently. "But someone wanted to make sure no one could ever suggest you did. Someone who cares about you very much." Vinny's face flashed through my mind, along with his father's long-ago promise. "If you ever need help, contact me without hesitation." But I'd never asked for help. Had I? The question haunted me over the next few days. Sam stayed close, helping me recover, arranging for Emma to visit, managing my work appointments. One evening, after Emma had fallen asleep on the hospital couch, Sam pulled a chair close to my bed. "David, I need to ask you something," she said softly, "and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course," I replied. "That night when we were watching the movie with Emma, you said something about wishing you had superpowers. You seemed almost serious about it, like you really believed it was possible." I felt my face grow warm. "I was just being silly." "No, I don't think you were," Sam said. "And I've been thinking about everything that's happened. Warren, Brad, Joe, all these coincidences. David, did you somehow wish for these things to happen?" I stared at her, my heart pounding. "I don't know," I admitted quietly. "I mean, I wished they'd suffer consequences. I wished they'd leave me alone. But I never actually thought that your wishes would come true," Sam finished. "It sounds crazy," I said. "Maybe," Sam agreed. "Or maybe someone who loves you very much has been paying very close attention to what you've been saying, what you've been wishing for." The weight of her words settled over me. I thought about Vinny's visits, his father's promise, the way things had aligned so perfectly to give me alibis. "Sam, if I did somehow cause this, even indirectly, I need you to know I never." She put her finger on my lips. "I know. You're a good man, David. You would never hurt anyone deliberately. But sometimes the people who love us take matters into their own hands. I don't want to have that kind of power over people," I said. "If people do things because they think I want them to, even if I don't say it out loud, then maybe you should be very clear about what you actually want," Sam suggested. "Starting right now. What do you want, David?" I looked into her eyes. "I want a peaceful life with Emma. I want to build something real with you, not because of any obligation or manipulation, but because we both choose it freely. I want the past to stay in the past. I don't want anyone else to get hurt on my account. Sam smiled. That's why I'm telling you about my past, she said. The psychiatric ward, the assault, all of it. I wanted you to know the real me, not some idealized version. I want you to love me, or not, based on who I actually am. I do love you, I said, for who you are. Not because of some power I think I have, not because you're helping me, but because you're you. She kissed me then, gently. And that's how I know any feelings I have are real. Because you just told me explicitly that you don't want to control how I feel. So when I tell you I love you, you'll know it comes from my heart. Several days later, I was finally released from the hospital. Life gradually returned to normal, though normal now included a deeper relationship with Sam that neither of us could deny any longer. We spent that first night together at my house, after Emma had gone to sleep at my parents'. Everything felt right in a way nothing had in years. The next morning, I woke and took a refreshing shower. When I emerged, Sam greeted me with a smile before taking her turn in the bathroom. We were both sitting at the kitchen table sipping coffee when Emma came in. "Good morning, Daddy." "Good morning, Sam," she said. Then, with the perceptiveness only children possess, she asked, "Did you both spend the night here?" I knew the situation was a little awkward, but Sam handled it smoothly. "Yes, I stayed because I was too tired to drive home," she said simply. Emma didn't ask any further questions and just helped herself to a bowl of cereal. During the drive to work that morning, I plucked up the courage to speak my heart fully. "Sam, I love you," I said, "and I'm genuinely relieved that you love me for who I am, not because of any sense of obligation or family loyalty. When you say you love me, I know it comes from your heart." As we were getting ready to exit the car, Sam leaned over and kissed me gently on the lips. "I really love you too," she said softly, "and I'm ready to do everything I can to make you happy." The workday passed calmly until an uninvited voice shattered the peace. Claire's presence in the waiting room caused a wave of dread to wash over me. "Where's David? I demand to talk to him right now." Claire's voice pierced the air. Ignoring Sam's presence, she boldly walked past her and burst into my office, quickly closing the door behind her. "I know you're responsible for the deaths of my previous partners," she vowed, her face contorted with rage. "I'll collect the evidence and get you arrested. You can't escape the consequences of your actions." I replied calmly, "I'm absolutely not involved in the tragic deaths of your former partners. Moreover, I've fully cooperated with the authorities in every investigation. In 2 cases, I was in the hospital, and in one of those cases, I was in a coma. To blame me, you'd need to perform an amazing feat of manipulation. Leave my office immediately before I call security," I continued. "I regret marrying you. It was undoubtedly a mistake. The only positive result of our relationship is our daughter Emma. If I wanted to hurt anyone, it would be you." When she left my office, she slammed the door with such force that it echoed through the empty hallway. Curiosity got the better of me, and I cautiously opened the door, straining to hear their conversation. Since it was near closing time, there was no one else nearby. Claire and Sam were having a heated argument. Sam seemed to be in complete control of herself. "Look, you'd better stay away from David," she warned sternly. "You've already caused him enough trouble. If you're looking for trouble, you'll get it," Claire shot back. Then, oddly enough, Sam handed Claire an envelope. Opening it, Claire's face went pale as she examined a collection of photographs. She was depicted with different men in each one, and she began trembling with fear. "Where did you get these?" she demanded. "Let's just say they were delivered to my desk," Sam replied simply. "In each picture, you're shown in intimate settings with different people," Sam continued. "And the dates and times indicate you were the last person seen with Warren, Brad, and Joe before their deaths. Who took these pictures?" Claire demanded desperately. "Was it you? Did you organize this? Do you know who's behind the deaths of my friends? I'm going to report this to the police and show them these photos. I'd advise you to think seriously about the consequences before revealing these pictures to anyone," Sam suggested calmly. Are you familiar with the Black Widow spider? She engages with her partners before destroying them. Perhaps you have a similar pattern of behavior. You were the last person to see them alive. I'll tell the authorities you gave me these photos, Claire exclaimed. I'm wearing gloves, Sam said, holding up her hands, so I can deny I ever saw them. As I said, one morning I found these photos on my desk. Moreover, I've never even met any of these men. I think it would be wise for you to distance yourself from David and stop accusing him, or me, of any offenses, Sam suggested. David isn't even aware of these other men, including your recent partner Larry. How did you find out about Larry? Claire asked, her voice shaking. It's not important how I got this knowledge. What's important is that I have it, Sam replied. I have a recommendation for you. Why should I listen to anything you have to say? Claire asked skeptically. Because if you ignore my advice, both you and your current partner may face some difficulties, Sam warned. Perhaps it would be better for you and Larry to move away from David and his sphere of influence. Your well-being may depend on it. I know your law firm has several branches, Sam continued. I'd like to suggest that you and Larry consider transferring to one of those branches at the earliest opportunity. As for Emma, you can have access to your daughter whenever you wish. Just let us know in advance so we can arrange for her to visit you. Perhaps during holidays. You'll miss her very much. It looks like you're in love with David and want to exclude me from his life, Claire said bitterly. I love both David and Emma, Sam replied evenly. So it would be better if we all moved on and enjoyed our lives without further complications. When I heard Claire leave, I stepped out into the hallway. Curiosity got the better of me, and I turned to Sam. What were you arguing about? I asked. Just girl talk, Sam replied calmly. I warned her to back off or face the consequences. I even suggested she consider moving to another city. Not wanting to delve into the topic further, I decided to leave it alone. If everything worked out the way Sam suggested, I'd be fine with that outcome. The following week, Claire called me unexpectedly. I wanted to let you know about a potential promotion opportunity, she said, her tone subdued. But there's a catch, I have to relocate next week. The new position is on the other side of the state. What about Emma? I asked. I'd like to see her before I leave, Claire said. Can we arrange that? Of course, I replied. To my surprise, Sam and I got married just a month later. Emma's happiness was almost equal to mine. Our parents expressed great joy and were thrilled that we'd found each other. We spent our honeymoon exploring New York City. Vinny's family had deep connections there, and they arranged for us to stay at a beautiful brownstone in Manhattan that belonged to one of Vinny's relatives. Vinny and his wife flew in to act as our personal guides around the city. Emma accompanied us on daytime excursions, but in the evenings she stayed with Vinny's children at their hotel, allowing Sam and me to enjoy the nightlife. When we were getting ready to return home, Vinny pulled me aside one last time. Remember, if you ever need my help, you can call me, he said quietly, his expression serious. But something tells me you won't need to. I think all your problems have been taken care of. I met his eyes and understood. We didn't need to say anything more. Emma still visits her mother several times a year. Fortunately, we haven't had any other problems with Claire, and we continue to receive her monthly child support payments as ordered by the court. As for the mysterious deaths of Claire's partners, they remain officially unsolved. The investigations were eventually closed due to lack of evidence. But I have my suspicions about what really happened. I can guess who orchestrated it all, though I'll never say it out loud. And I understand that even without asking, my dear friend came to my aid, just as his father had promised all those years ago when I saved Vinny's life. Some debts, it seems, are repaid in unexpected ways. Now, as I sit here watching Sam and Emma laughing together in our backyard, I realize that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living well, surrounded by people who genuinely love you. The past is behind me. The future stretches ahead, bright and full of promise. And I'm finally truly free. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.